Hey everyone, it's Presley and Dad here, and today we're going to be talking about the Colorado ballot. I was going to say vote, and then I said ballot.
Okay.
The Colorado ballot that my parents are going to be voting on.
And the secrecy sleeve?
And the secrecy sleeve.
I
don't know why it exists.
Comes with it. I don't.
It comes with
how
three different secret leaves.
How is it more secret with this on it in the envelope
secrecy
than if
sleeve.
it was just in the envelope?
I don't know.
I don't know what the extra layer of secrecy that comes with putting it in the secrecy sleeve comes with, but I think it's kind of cool. Okay, yeah. So Colorado has a really good mail-in ballot, which I kind of like, because there's a thing about voter disenfranchisement. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
So there's this thing about how hard or easy it is for people to vote, right?
Yeah.
And like leaving work and going and voting can be really difficult for some people. Like it's not like, mommy and like me and the jobs that we've had, it's been pretty easy for us to be able to take a day or take an hour or whatever and go vote, right? But sometimes it's hard for people depending on their jobs and what they're doing and stuff. And so being able to either go vote early, like have a weekend day where you can go vote, or do a mail-in so you don't even have to leave your job to go vote. Like it's really cool that they do.
This is something I heard from Tumblr, but aren't you legally allowed to take at least 7 hours off to go and vote? Is that a thing?
I don't know.
Or did I just hear that?
I don't
assume it was a thing.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
It seems like it's probably not 7 hours.
No.
If there is a thing.
Up to 7 hours.
But
something around that.
There's also like what's allowed and what's legally required for people to allow you to do it, and what you can kind of get away with and stuff, and what people worry about. Like even taking advantage of some of those things, people worry about they're going to get in trouble, right? Mm-hmm. And if you're hourly, you don't get paid for those hours, and like there's a whole thing, right?
Yeah.
So making it easy to vote is awesome. Like I love that, right? The other thing Colorado, so we're just going to talk about it just a little bit. The other thing Colorado makes it easy to do is get on the ballot to run for president. I think you have to. I think it's like $1,000. You pay $1,000, and you get. I think you have to have 9 people maybe like that would agree to be your electors in the electoral college, right? Mm-hmm. And if you do that, you can be on the ballot, right? So I think we may have the most, or one of the most, longest list of presidential candidates. Like these are all of the presidential candidates on the Colorado ballot, right? And you can also do a write-in. Like I could vote for you if I wanted to. You can write in somebody's name, and people write in fictional characters and stuff like that. So that's kind of nutty. So there's that. It's harder. It's easier to get on the presidential list than it is to be one of the senators. And like lower offices, it's harder to get on the ballot than it is to do that. But what I really wanted to talk about was Colorado has one of the easiest constitutions to amend, like our state constitution. Yeah. And so it's a relatively easy process. And so the idea is that they want the people to vote for major changes, right? And not have just politicians making changes and stuff, right? And so if the people want something to be done in the state, and the politicians won't vote for it, they won't bring it up and vote and make a law about it, then the people can put it on the ballot and people vote for it and they do it, right? So actually one of the things that we're going to read about here in a minute is they're trying to make it a little bit harder to do that. But it's kind of cool that it's the people can kind of raise these initiatives and try and amend the Constitution, right?
Yeah.
So we're not going to focus much on the people that are like running for Congress and the presidential election and stuff. Everybody sort of all knows about all that stuff. But I wanted to read some of these things that are trying to either amend the Constitution or do like ballot issues, right? So yeah, these are all voting for people like judges and things like that. And then later in the ballot, they have stuff where they vote for different issues that the people that either amendments like these are constitutional amendments. And some of these are, just ballot issues, statutory things. They're not all constitutional amendments, but a lot of them are. Yeah. So I'm going to read a couple of these to you, and then we're going to talk about what you think about them.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just kind of a cold conversation and see what you think. This is probably my favorite one that's on the ballot, right? This is the first one that comes up as a ballot question. Shall there be an amendment to the Colorado Constitution concerning the removal of the exception to the prohibition of slavery and involuntary servitude when used as punishment for persons duly convicted of a crime?
That's a lot of fancy words.
It is. And you know what that means?
Very vaguely.
Yeah, so what it means is that the Colorado Constitution prohibits slavery and indentured servitude, or involuntary servitude, I think is what it says here, right? Involuntary servitude, which means making someone work. Yeah. Right. And then either kind of taking their money or paying them very little and sort of forcing people to work for you, right? And so basically slavery, right? And in the Colorado Constitution, when they outlaw slavery, there's an exception that says unless you've been convicted of a crime. Yeah. And then slavery is okay. or involuntary servitude is okay.
Involuntary servitude.
Right. And so, like, they're trying to take that out. And when I first heard about this one, I was thinking, oh, okay, well, sometimes there's just laws that are on the books that have been on the books for like 100 years, and nobody ever gets around to sort of taking them out. And so I thought this was one of those cases, but when I started looking at it, there are actually people that are arguing against making this change to the Colorado Constitution. And they're sort of saying that sometimes we do have prisoners who have like work programs or work release programs. They do make prisoners sort of do jobs in prisons sometimes and pay them like next to nothing to do that kind of work. And it would jeopardize those kinds of systems. And so we should keep the exception, I can't believe I'm saying this, we should keep the exception in our Constitution to the prohibition of slavery for people who've been convicted of a crime so that we can continue to make them work and pay them nothing for doing that.
That's a weird thing to
What are your thoughts about such a constitutional amendment?
No. That is actually, like, I'm just trying to think about that. There's a lot of fancy words, and
don't worry about the language. Like, that's kind of what it means, right?
Like, the explanation is kind of odd, because, like, it depends on, like, who are you making do this? Like, it depends.
So, that's a good question. Like, does it depend? Like, are there people that you should be able to force to do a job and not pay, basically, for doing that job, even if they're prisoners? Like, if you put somebody in prison, should that person just be able to, like, sit and not do anything and just be in prison for a long time? Or should you be able to make them do things while they're in prison?
I didn't know you were allowed to make them do things. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, it is kind of a thing.
It's a thing.
Right. Like, to me, I think that if you're worried that you need an exception to, a prohibition of slavery and indentured servitude, you probably shouldn't be doing the thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, even if they're prisoners. Like, if you think that it's reasonable that someone could call what you're doing involuntary servitude or slavery, you probably shouldn't be doing that thing.
Yeah. That's,
right?
Yeah. Don't do the thing if someone would call it slavery.
If your work release program in a prison could reasonably be considered slavery, you probably shouldn't be doing it, right?
Yeah.
I don't care if they're prisoners.
That's a good
you probably
way
shouldn't
to
be
put
doing
the
it,
word.
right? Yeah, right. I thought that one was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see what else we got here. In Colorado, we got an amendment concerning exemption of property taxation for. Yeah, we won't need to worry about that one.
I don't know. It's only about
Yeah, don't worry about that one.
I thought I saw the word video games, but I didn't.
All right, so here's a really big one. This
Oh my
is
God.
69, Amendment 69 for the Constitution, right? So basically what this one says is, should we raise $25 billion a year in taxes? So more taxes, people that live here in Colorado pay more taxes. And in exchange for that, basically, they give everyone health care.
Yeah.
Everyone gets insurance, so that, like, if you get sick and you go see the doctor and stuff, it's called single payer health care. So that means that, like, and a lot of like European countries have something similar to this, right? So everyone pays a lot of taxes in, and then whenever somebody gets sick, those taxes go to help make the person, cover their medical costs and stuff like that, right?
Would help. That would generally be helpful, because if you would stop giant disease outbreaks in the first place. Like, if one person got sick with a disease,
sure,
and then everyone else uses their money to help cure the disease, and the disease doesn't spread to everyone else, and no one else gets sick.
Yeah, or their illness, not necessarily curing diseases, right? But if someone gets ill, then they would be less likely to spread, and
it's
people who can't afford
helpful.
healthcare get healthcare, right?
Yeah.
So this is really kind of a tough thing, right? So there's a couple of different levels to this one, right? There is is it a good idea to sort of mandate that everyone has insurance and everyone shares in the cost of everyone's health care. And then there's another thing about, is what they've outlined here the right way to go about doing that? So even if you believe it's a good thing to do that, then is this the right way to do it, right? So you have to kind of get in the nitty gritty, right? But insurance is sort of based on this idea, right? That you don't know who's going to get sick. And so everybody pulls their money together. And when somebody gets sick,
then they can use that money.
They can use that money, right? So that's a good concept,
Yeah.
right? The question is, can you force people to buy into an insurance program, which is sort of what you're doing here by doing the taxing. Like, you have to also sort of draw this line between what's a good idea and what would be sort of better for the community, and what you can force people to do. Because you can't, like, even when you think that somebody should do something, you don't necessarily have the right to force them to do that, right? That's kind of where this issue comes down a little, like, it's two things, like I said. One is, can you force people to do it, and one is this the right implementation of that thing?
Yeah, but there's, like, the thing where, like, it depends on how much you're raising taxes for an individual.
Yeah.
Because, like, it means we're getting $25 billion, I think?
$25 billion a
You're
year.
getting $25 billion a year from the entirety of Colorado.
Yeah.
So it
It's
depends.
still quite a bit.
Yeah, like, it just depends on maybe how much each individual
Mhm.
has to pay on that.
Mhm.
Because if each individual only pays, like, if you have a lower amount and each individual only pays, like, a few dollars more, then...
Right. But like,
It's just
so
a generally
philosophically,
awful
you're okay with the idea of forcing everyone to get insurance as long as it's not too cumbersome on each individual.
Yeah, I know, like, nothing about taxes.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's kind of what it is. You're just kind of forcing everybody you're taking money from everybody
to make them do things.
to make them,
Pay
to
for
give
things.
insurance for everybody else, to give medical care for everyone else.
Yeah, but we do the same thing for, like, roads in the military, too.
We do. Yeah,
So-
that's a great point, right? So that's exactly, we pay taxes, and that pays for the military, it pays for roads, it pays for the police, it pays for all of these kinds of things, right? So the question is,
Just
where do
adding
you
one more
draw the
thing.
line? Yeah. Is healthcare one of those things that we should continue to do?
I feel like we should do healthcare just because it's generally helpful to people
True.
in the state of Colorado.
Yeah.
And if one person, like, even though it's just generally the right thing to do to help someone else out, it's still helpful for the community as a whole because there's no
A healthier
illness
community,
spreading.
right? And yeah, like there's an argument too that it's cheaper in the long run because if people have access to preventative care, like you said, when somebody starts to get sick, they can go to the doctor. It's cheaper than letting that person get sicker and sicker and sicker until they end up in the emergency room or until like we have to pay for their care and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's an interesting.
It's cheaper
That's a
than
that's a
everything.
big one. And it's huge. You can see how big the thing
Yeah.
is, right? All right, here's another one. Should we raise the minimum wage?
Yes.
To $9.30 an hour, with annual increases of 90 cents every January 1st until it reaches $12 in 2020, and annually adjust thereafter based on cost of living increases.
Probably because
So,
that's
should we raise the minimum wage? What should the minimum wage be? Not a number.
Yeah.
Not a number. I don't mean like how much should it be as a number, but what do you think that the minimum wage should be based on? Do you want me to give you the two arguments for that one, or do you want to say what you think?
I just want to say, like, it depends on what we're doing to the money. Like, I would say if we, like, in a video game, we just have this infinite possibility for money. And that's what I'm used to, is having an infinite possibility for money.
Right.
So, like, sure, yeah, you should totally give these people more money.
All right.
But then it depends on, like, where are we taking
Where
this
the
money
money's coming from, yeah.
Where are we taking it?
So I mean, it's coming from the employers, right? It's the people that run the company that make money that have to pay their employers more. So it costs
But
the
those people
employers
already have, like,
more.
billions and billions of dollars.
Not everybody. Like there are a lot of small businesses. Like
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we have a small business, right?
Yeah.
Act Out Games is a small business, and we don't have billions and billions of dollars.
Yeah.
And we can't afford to pay someone current minimum wage, much less if minimum wage was increased, we wouldn't
Yeah.
be able to pay them more minimum wage. So that you have to think about like small businesses
Yeah,
too.
small businesses.
It's not just giant corporations; it's small businesses that are
Yeah.
impacted by it, right? But it sort of goes back to like the indentured servitude kind of thing too that we talked about first, right? Where the fundamental question is, should minimum wage be what's called a living wage? Should it be required to pay someone enough to, rent a place to live and get groceries and have a car and car insurance and like do all the fundamental things that they need to be able to live in the city that they live in, right? And so,
I think so.
should it be that, or a lot of people argue that minimum wage jobs, like working fast food or some retail kinds of things like that, that those are what you would call starter jobs. And so, like when you're in high school or you're working part time when you're in college, that's when you should be making minimum wage.
Yeah.
And that way it doesn't. That's not all of your money. Your parents are still helping you out. You're still doing a lot of things. And then when you get out of school, you go on to bigger and better jobs, and you make more money than the minimum wage. So minimum wage doesn't have to be a living wage because it's intended for people who shouldn't be living off of it, right?
Well, if it's like that, then there shouldn't be so many jobs that only pay minimum wage.
That's a really good point. Well, so the counter argument to that is that the majority of people that make minimum wage are living off of the minimum wage.
Yeah.
Like whether you want it to be that way or not, that's kind of the way it is in the world. But a lot of
Yeah.
times it's like single moms or single dads or
Disabled
people that
people
are
that aren't
yeah
able
like
to get a
people
better
who
job.
people who need to, for whatever reason, these jobs pay minimum wage and that's what they make, right? And so the question is, should it be a living wage? Should you be able to live off of minimum wage wherever you live? And then how do you calculate minimum wage? Like I personally don't like the idea of like a national living wage or a minimum wage. A national minimum wage where like the federal government says, okay, $15 an hour everybody across the country should pay at least $15 an hour, right?
Yeah, I think
because
it's
it costs different to live different places.
Yeah,
like living in Los Angeles or Hawaii or somewhere
really
else is really expensive, but living in a small town in Tennessee is cheaper.
Yeah.
And so like your minimum wage, I think you probably, even if you believe that a minimum wage should be a living wage, I think it should be the living wage for your community.
Yeah, probably.
It should be decided at a smaller level, right?
I think a smaller level would be better, just because it is really expensive to live in Texas, or not Texas. Why am I thinking of Texas?
What? Texas isn't that bad, actually. Texas is a relatively inexpensive place to live.
That was a random word that came out of my mouth.
Totally random. Yeah.
Los Angeles.
Yeah, Los Angeles,
Hawaii,
New York, like San Francisco, like all these places that are really ridiculously expensive to live, their minimum wage may be higher because...
So that people can live there.
Right, but you shouldn't say, okay, because it costs a ton to live in San Francisco, you should have the same minimum wage in, Bozeman, Montana, right?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't cost as much to live there. So if you buy the argument that it should be a living wage, which I think is it's a discussion that people can have, then you have to decide again how do you calculate living wage?
Yeah, I'd definitely say city minimum wage should probably be a living wage, maybe, just because there's a lot of people trying to live off of minimum wage, and they can't really afford anything really healthy to even eat. They have to go buy dollar meals and kids eat free days and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, totally true.
So I'd say it has to be, it probably should
like
be.
If someone's working full time, they should be making enough money to live off of it.
Yeah.
That's the argument for minimum wage, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, I like that.
Statewide, not statewide. What is the word? Varying between states.
Yeah, that's the good word.
Yeah, but that's not a word. That is...
It's just more localized.
Yeah,
right.
Localized, that's a good word.
All right, let's do a couple more and then we'll wrap up. This one is, I love this one, because it's, shall there be an amendment to the Colorado Constitution making it more difficult to amend the Colorado Constitution? Just that's awesome. You can't come up with something better than that, right? And so this is arguing that all of these things where, people, part of the argument for this is, and this is a huge thing with elections in general, right? So you have the city centers versus the more rural areas, the urban areas versus the rural areas, right? So if you look at Denver and Colorado Springs and Fort Collins kind of areas, right? There's a bunch of people that live in a small area, right?
Yeah.
And then other parts of Colorado, there's fewer people. People are way more spread out, right? And so if you have just sort of a simple majority, all you have to get is a majority of the people in Colorado to decide something, then you can get those three places. If you get enough people in those three places, it outweighs all of the rest of Colorado, right?
Yeah.
And so people don't like that because small geographic areas can dominate elections. And if we wanted to pass amendments to the Constitution, if it's the people that live in the cities who may have very different needs than the people that live in the more rural areas like farms and ranchers and things like that, then the city dwellers' needs overwhelm the people who live out in the country, right? But another way to look at it is it really is one person, one vote, right? If that just happens to be where all the people live, then if you get 50% of the people plus one who want to do something, that's how you should decide the elections, right?
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting problem to solve about how do you deal with, there's city centers or population centers that have a ton of people that live there, that you can just get this really small geographic area to vote, and it overwhelms all of the rest of the state because that's where a lot of people live.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, that's a really,
yeah.
It's a political science problem. It's a huge problem. Yeah, you did. It's okay. No worries.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question because, I don't know how to think about this question because it's really specific. Can we just ask why really specific ones are in all caps for some reason?
I don't know what the rules are with why some of them are all in all caps and some aren't.
Some of them are yelling at me, and most of them are very professional.
No idea. No idea. It's an excellent observation, though.
But yeah, I don't know how to think about that because I guess if a bunch of people voted for one thing, that would help them in their place, but then it But then otherwise,
So it's can the majority, and that's just a general thing, not even the whole urban versus rural thing, but should the majority be able to sort of run roughshod over the minority, right? If majority rules in all of these decisions, then a lot of times the minority is going to get ignored, or the things that the minority need that the majority don't need will get ignored. I don't know that there's a better system to kind of solve those things.
I hope we have the best system right now. It's kind of late. I'm supposed it's like the best system that we have right now is the one that we have, because if a majority of people need that thing, then we should probably give them that thing.
Yeah, but what if a minority of people really need something, but the majority decides that it doesn't impact them, so they don't want to pay for it, or they don't want to make a law about it? You could exclude somebody because of that. So there are problems. I don't know if you have a better system. I'd love to hear about it, right?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Think about how systems work.
But then, you know, like the Constitution, and there are laws that sort of the structure of the laws that protect the minority, right? That the majority, you know, we try and have a system where the majority can't disadvantage the minority too much, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's do one more. This is kind of an interesting one. I don't know if this is a pretty serious one too. I don't know what you think about this one, right? So this is the idea if someone is terminally ill, right, which means they're going to die.
Yeah.
And they have 2 doctors that say that within the next 6 months they're going to die, and there's really nothing that they can do about it. There's no treatment. There's no cure. There's nothing that can be done about it. Should a doctor be able to give that person medication that will take their life in a sort of controlled, you go to sleep kind of way? Like, let's say you've got 6 months left to live and you're going to die, and there's nothing that anybody thinks they can do about it, and 2 doctors have confirmed that, and it's going to be a painful 6 months, you know, sort of this excruciating 6 months, and then you're going to die at the end of 6 months.
Yeah.
Should you be able to take a pill? Should a doctor be able to give you a pill, and you take that pill? It's assisted suicide, basically, or doctor-assisted suicide, and then you just go to sleep, and so you have a more, you know, you control when you die and how you die in a more calm way than going through. I think
a person should be able to say, are you not allowed to say, like, dog?
It's okay.
Are you not actually, like, allowed to do that yet, or?
Doctors can't help you. I mean, obviously people commit suicide all the time, right?
Yeah.
But they do it on their own way. Or they take an overdose of drugs, and then that's kind of a dangerous thing because it may work, it may not work. You don't know necessarily what you're doing. And there's a whole, like, clearly you don't want to support people just going off on their own and committing suicide, right? But
like
if a doctor, you know, if someone just decided that this is what they want to do, and the doctors are agreeing that there's no other outcome for where they're going to go, should a doctor be able to control that and make that a safer? It's not really safer. It's safer, kind of, right? Yeah. So that they know it's going to work, and they know it's going to be sort of a calm thing.
I feel like a person should be able to
make their own decision.
Yeah, be able to make their own decision if they want that. But we should be very careful with where that medication is kept.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like there's this whole thing about, I mean, there's always these cases that happen that it's just miraculous recovery, right? Everyone thought that this person was going to die, and then something happens and they don't. And so is that chance worth, you know, not allowing the vast majority of other people to be able to take this as a path forward? Like, it's a really serious thing to vote about. Like this is voting, right? This is the community coming together and deciding what the morals of the community are, and kind of what we as a collective come together and decide. Like, do we value human life so much that we don't allow someone to take their own life, even in these extreme circumstances? Or do we allow people to take it? And you always have to think about, like, the edge cases. If we allow this, what else will happen? What are the unintended consequences that are going to come out of this, right? So every time you're reviewing these kinds of things, that's the stuff that we have to think about all the time.
Yeah. I just feel like if someone wants to do that, then they should be able to. Like, if someone wants to take the chance and see if there's a miraculous recovery,
they can decide for themselves.
They can decide for themselves. I feel like that is the best current thought. This is just, like, completely cold, so I haven't thought about this whatsoever. So.
Yeah, no, but that's why we're talking about. Like, I'd like for you to think about these a little bit, and we'll talk about it a little bit more later. But like, Mom and I have to vote, right? We got to mail these things in tomorrow.
Yeah.
But yeah, like they're big, kind of weighty decisions, right? And I kind of, I mean, people should be able. I tend to lean towards people being able to make their own decisions, right? And then, like, but you go back to, like, the insurance thing, right? The healthcare. Should people be able to make their own decision about whether they want to pay for other people's healthcare, or should we force everyone to pitch in and pay extra taxes to be able to pay for healthcare? We
force people to pay for things, though.
We do, but what do you force them to be able to do, right? So there's this whole thing about personal responsibility and everybody making their own decisions versus people deciding what's for the best of the community and forcing people to participate. Like, those are the balances that you're always having to sort of weigh out when you're looking at how you vote and how government runs and what the real roles and responsibilities of government are.
Yeah.
Right? So I just we need to start talking a little bit more about these. It's going to be a few years before you kind of get to where you have to do this stuff
few years.
Yeah.
7 years.
But it's good for you to start thinking about these things and sort of looking at the decisions that we have to make when we vote. And even, like, in some ways in Colorado, more than picking the people that are in the office, looking at these kinds of direct things. And you can see, just in talking about a couple of these, how much this will impact people's lives.
Yeah.
And it almost certainly, most of these things that Mom and I are going to vote on tomorrow aren't going to impact our lives.
Yeah.
Right?
And impact others.
They're going to impact other people, and we're voting to make decisions for other people that we don't know.
Yeah.
And we're trying to decide, like, as a community what we do and stuff, and you have to take that pretty seriously and think about that kind of things.
Yeah.
In fact, you have to keep it secret.
Secret.
Right. And it's actually illegal for us to fill out the ballot and show you a picture of it in Colorado.
It is illegal.
It is against the law. Although there's a federal court has ruled that that's a violation of the First Amendment, and so some of those laws will probably go away. But currently, like,
it's
actually
really
filling this out
law,
and taking a
but
selfie.
It's a law.
Yeah. So what they said.
This
is kind of, I'll just run this really quickly because this is kind of I think this is kind of dumb. But their argument is that people can pay for votes. So someone could say, okay, they give me $100 to vote for someone in the election or vote for one of these things, and then the way that I would prove to that person that I voted the way they wanted me to is I would take a picture of my ballot and post it on Facebook. Which is just dumb. Like, if I was doing something illegal, I would send them a picture of my ballot, but I probably wouldn't post it on Facebook. And number two, if I took a picture of my ballot and showed it to you right now, like, that is in no way proof that I mailed this thing in.
Yeah.
Or that I actually did anything, or that was my ballot, or that I did. Like, it's just that, like, that's the actual reason why.
Oh,
that's the actual reason why it's illegal, is to combat vote buying and stuff like that, which is just dumb. And, like, you have to, when you have something like the First Amendment, like freedom of speech and expression, and to be able to say, hey, here's who I voted for, here's why, and here's what I did, and hey, here's my ballot and stuff. That's a constitutional right? Yeah. And so the government can restrict those things, but it has to show a really compelling reason for doing that.
That's not a really compelling
reason. That doesn't seem to me to be a really which is why I think they lost. That's why the federal courts are sort of saying, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
But that's just another sort of interesting thing that we'll keep secret. But yeah, I think
this is good. Secret.
Yeah. So you know, where's the subscribe button, Presley?
It's
over there.
Currently down there. And
click on the subscribe button, and there's probably a little button somewhere around in here, and we'll tell you kind of how some of these things came out when the election's over.
I still don't understand how this makes your.
It's double secret.
It's double secret.
It's doubly secret.
How does this make it a secret? Oh, you should put it in here?
Yeah, you vote in here, and you put that in here, and then you put that in the envelope.
Okay.
And somehow it doubles your secrecy.
I thought you just kind of put this in the envelope, and I'm like, that's not helping.
No, you put this in the sleeve, and then put the sleeve in the envelope, and it's doubly secret that way.
It has to be extra secret.
I don't know, it's extra secret.
I don't know why it has to be extra secret, but it does.
Yeah, okay, cool. That was fun.
Yeah.
That was good. Like, these are good things to talk about and see. I'm always curious to hear your take on some of these kinds of things. The more you think about it, I'm curious to hear what you think.
But it is really weird to think about that the election after the next election, I'm probably legally old enough to vote.
4 years.
Is it 4 years?
Yeah.
No, but you'll vote every 4 years.
4 years for president.
So the election after for president.
Oh, like after the next one,
yeah,
not this one, but
that's
yes,
what I said.
yeah. No, you're right.
I will be
sorry, I'm sorry.
Old enough to vote. I will be 8. No, I will be 19. I think.
Yeah. You will be voting the election after the next election.
That's really weird to think.
And there are elections all the time. There's like city and state and like all these, every 2 years. Yeah. Then you're gonna miss one more presidential election, and then you'll be able to vote.
Yeah, that's just weird to think about.
All right, get us out of here.
So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.